Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being here and showing the film with us at the festival. It's a very, very rich film. It's very complex. You talk about a lot of film about Brazil, about people, about cinema, and it's also very complex structure around time, both in the film. The way the story is laid out, and also in the construction and the presentation of the film. I was wondering if you could both talk about the idea of time and the importance of time and the structure from the writing process to shooting and maybe editing.
Thank you for the question. I think I have to mention that I worked 7 years on my previous film, Pictures of Ghosts, which you screened here at the New York Film Festival 2 years ago. And that is, it's an essay film and a documentary with a little bit of fiction. And that film taught me to look at the same place, the same places from different angles and different times. There's a lot of footage of my own home, the home where we used to live, in fact, over a period of 35 years. And also the city itself, using a lot of archive material from 1923 until weeks before I finished post-production on that film. And that showed me different timelines and how they can coexist in one same sequence. And I think naturally that film led me to writing The Secret Agent. That film also gave me the emotional basis on which to write this film. Because 77, I was 9 years old. I remember some of it, mostly because of a health situation in my family involving my mom at the time. And that really put a landmark on 77 and 78. And so I remember even smells, which I tried to include in the script, but not sure it worked. But yeah, so yeah, I still think, I said it last night, I still think that the cut is one of the best special effects in cinema, and it's incredibly inexpensive. You know. All you have to do is cut, you know. And then you're into another time and in the same place. You know.
Yes, exactly. When we were starting to think about the film, and Kleber already had some ideas, and we were trying as producers to find a way to make it happen, but it was a very difficult time in Brazil. We couldn't find funding, and that's when he worked on this film, Pictures of Ghosts, and it certainly did have an impact on the process of writing, like the time traveling of digging into archives, personal archives, but also the archives of cinema and yeah, I think I realized that when I read the first draft of the script, and especially the sequence in the cinema with the conversation, and when we understand, you know, that people from the future are listening, and I thought, wow, we have a film. I was really confident about this script, excited.
I mean, you did say that. I mean, it's obviously about Brazil and the history of Brazil and political changes from the 60s, 70s to today. But it does, there's a universal part of that, sadly. That's happening in many, many countries. So I'm sure that people from, like, you know, like you mentioned Spain, but I think probably also in the US would reflect about. You see the film; it's very entertaining. It's fun to watch, but it's also scary. And I was wondering also if it's something you were thinking about when you were making the film. It's like it's about Brazil, but it's about the world.
Yeah, we were in Spain early in the week, and it was really interesting because many observers, critics mentioned Spain's difficulty in either acknowledging or facing the facts from the Franco regime. So yeah, well, first and foremost, it's very much about power, I think, and power is universal. It probably has its own Brazilian um, peculiarities in the logic of the whole story, but it really has to do with power and how somebody can be squashed by decisions. And I thought a lot about this is something that I discussed with the actors many times. The famous sentence which says, "No good deed will go unpunished," you know, and that's the logic of many situations of in authoritarian regimes or situations of democracy where some kind of power is used, you know, to make decisions. But yeah, the film is still young, and I'm still observing how it will interact with U.S. audiences, for example, Argentinian audiences, and we haven't, and the film hasn't really opened in Brazil. We've begun to show it in different cities. It's doing really well, and the reaction is quite strong. But I'm still learning from the reactions to the film.
I mean, you're talking about power, but there's really all the layers of corruption. So there's the power for the power, for the money. There's the corruption for stupidity. There's incompetence corruption. And then there's still one person that does this job at the end through the film, corrupted but poor. So there's also a level of reconciliation and forgiveness that you can think about because he's not involved in anything and just following orders. But there's like, yeah, the layers of corruption through the film and how it's working its way through. It's very interesting. Can you talk about like when you were writing this, how complex it was?
I think it comes from any, even personal experiences. For example, the gas station sequence, it's a reenactment of something that happened to me on an Ash Wednesday must have been 93 or 94. I was stopped by two cops, and they went through the full checklist of things that they hoped I would not have in the car, or I would have in the car, or maybe it would be wrong with the car. And everything was fine. And after 15 minutes, and the worst moment was when he said, "I'm going inside your car," and that's when my blood froze. And then in the end, all he wanted was some money to let me go, even if I hadn't done anything wrong. So it's fascinating, the logic of corruption, because nobody says, "I'm about to go into an act of corruption with you this afternoon." They say,
It would be honest.
yeah, but it doesn't happen like that. It's like, "So are we going for a ride?" "Yeah, we're going for a ride." "And how is it going to be?" "Oh, they're in the back." Nobody says we are going to execute two people we happen to think are horrible criminals. You know? So the logic of corruption is cynical, and it has its own language. And of course, I mean, there are so many observations that you pick up throughout life, and then they end up in a script like this, and of course the actors make it work. You know?
I mean, I know you mentioned that you wrote the role for Wagner specifically, and he works both roles like perfectly. This energy and the charm of the old movie star.
Three roles.
What do you mean three?
Well, he plays Marcelo, who's not really
Oh,
him,
yes,
and then he
okay.
plays Armando, who's him, and then the son.
But Marshall, yeah, we're fine. Yes.
Different looks. Beard, no beard.
Okay, many roles, many pictures. Can you talk about the experience for, I mean, he had to leave because he decided to do a play as opposed to talk about the film with us, but
These theater actors, yeah.
I know, such divas.
Quite the opposite, actually. Well, I wanted to work with him for many years, and the tricky thing about working with an actor or an actress you really want to work with is finding the right film. Sometimes you might, out of anxiety, just find something for him or her to do, but it's not the same thing as actually sitting down and writing a script, which is what I did for him. So it's tailor-made for him, considering what he had done before. I know his work in the theater, on television, and in film. And I wanted him to do something that he hadn't done before. That was my secret plan. I never told him this because it would sound too pretentious, but I can say it now. And then he read the script, and the beautiful thing about working with great people is that they understand. I mean, he understands Brazil. He could understand the point of the film as a citizen, as a person. And of course, I've been very lucky. I say this to Emilie so many times. We've been so lucky because we have worked only with not only great actors but great people, you know. And Wagner is one of them, and he's charismatic. The camera likes him very much, and I think he's wonderful in the film. And in the end, when we did the Sun, he he came up with he surprised me because he has the perfect local Recife accent, which I never asked him to do. And I was moved when he began to do the scene. I said, why did you get that accent? It's perfect, you know. Because you can try and yeah, almost there, but he nailed it. You know, it's really special. And of course, for Brazilian audiences, when he opens his mouth, it's like, this is incredible. You know, this is like a stunt, dramatic stunt acting in the best, most beautiful way. You know? So it's quite moving.
And he was involved in the film since the beginning, since before the script was written, and they shared a lot during years. You know, I think a lot of the film, of the script, comes from these conversations and their experiences as, you know, their own experiences of life in Brazil and in the recent years. And I think a lot of this is in the script.
Yeah, when the far right took power and Bolsonaro came in, and then we had Temer before Bolsonaro, who was not a nice person. Myself, Wagner, and a number of other people, we basically expressed ourselves without any. We just spoke our minds, and that generated a lot of attacks and persecution and heat, basically, you know, social networks and from the government itself. And then we would call each other and say, "What the hell is going on?" And a lot of that feeling, I think, went into the script. You know. He made a film called Marighella, which was cynically censored. I mean, there is no official censorship in Brazil, but there are ways they can sabotage the film, you know, forgetting the folder under the desk and things like that. So his film took 3 years to be theatrically released, just because it was about a left-wing fighter against the regime in the late 60s, Marighella, a big name from the left. So that explains his censorship, which was not censorship, it was just cynical censorship. There's a difference.
It's a different level of corruption.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, you tackled a lot of political angles in your previous work as well. I mean, specifically Bacurau. Then they created a pandemic to make sure you wouldn't get a release because it was too dangerous.
Yeah.
No, it's the film that we were talking a lot at the time before Pictures of Ghosts, and there's a strong correlation between these two films. And this one, it's nearly like a mirror image of both films together. So it's cinema and politics.
You mean
cinema and
Bacurau?
cinema. Well, yeah, I mean, and also you brought back Udo for the really beautiful little.
Udo Kier.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there was, he had to get something that is a short part in the film, but also a very deep meaning in the film, and about understanding, and about the past, and about being a good person as well.
Yeah, you mean the Udo sequence? Yeah, Recife has a strong Jewish community. I remember when I was a kid, there was a tailor, I think he was from Romania, a Jewish man. And I never forgot this man. He must have been 70 at the time. And I really believe that the far right, they get facts wrong. They don't quite understand context. And Euclides seems to believe that because he's German, he's a former German soldier, and then I also think it's a good scene for him to bond with Wagner, because he seems to have a man crush on Wagner's character. And so there's a lot happening in that sequence. It's quite complex in the way that he's married to another man, and he says, well, he helps us, and I'll show the scars, but then the scars, he doesn't want to show the scars. And we got to spend 1 week with Udo, which is always a good thing. I love him very much. It's a strange scene, I understand, but I like it very much.
I mean, each character could have its own film, really, because you don't give a lot of time to everyone. There's like, it goes in and out all the time, but you are interested as a viewer on the story of everyone. And I really, really want to film on Donia Sebastiana.
Sebastiana,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, she must have a film too.
She's a star now in Brazil. And the film hasn't even opened.
Oh, well, yeah. So did you write like more that you can see in the film and give it to the actors?
No, the film is strangely accurate in terms of what the script is. Only one scene ended up being cut, but we shot the scene. But Sebastiana was a character that only came because I knew Tânia Maria from Bacurau, and we all fell in love with her because she's an amazing person and full of character. And then when I was writing Sebastiana, I couldn't stop thinking of her, so I wrote it for her, but not knowing if she would be able to do the film, because she's not a professionally trained actress. But of course, we tried and we did some tests with a telephone, and she was amazing. And then we decided, let's go for it. She's incredible. She has a lot of charisma, I think, and she's memorable. 77-year-old firecracker.
Is that a real age?
That's her age. Yeah, she's 78 now.
I thought she was going to be 77 all the time.
She will always be 77 in the film, which is a beautiful thing.
Even in the next film too. I have one last question before we can move on to the audience. It's also something that's always interesting in your film. It's how you bring the music in, and different type of music, and how it changes the scenes as well. Can you talk about working on the music, the idea that are probably in your mind when you're writing, and then the reality of things, which is maybe I can't get that song, this one will work better. I need more Brazilian music, but this is music for a film. Yeah. It's very, very complex also, the way you use it.
It's very complex. It's literally years of work, because it begins in the script. I mean, the opening credit music is one of the first things I wrote into the film, and it worked. It is in the film. When he leaves the cinema, goes into Carnival, and then we see the morgue with the changing the leg. I also wrote that into the script, and it works quite well for me. But many of the songs, sometimes I go to a record store and I come back with 3 or 4 records, and there is some intuition that there might be something interesting in that unknown, completely obscure record. And sure enough, I found 3 pieces of music for this film. One afternoon, I went to a record store. One of them is the Chase, which I call wooden techno. It's from 1972. It's a fantastic track, which in Portuguese means the fight of the dog against the leopard, a briga do cachorro com a onça. It's a wonderful track, and it's in the film. But it's such a beautiful process because it also happens in the editing and then during the shoot also. Sometimes I see a scene happening in front of me and I remember a piece of music, and maybe I can try that piece of music. But it was beautiful to work in Paris with the mixing with Cyril Holtz, a good friend and a great mixer. And he was spending hours working with these obscure tracks from Recife in 1975. It's beautiful, beautiful work. How you can make it sound great, and how you can play with it. So it's a lot of pleasure. And then we have the original score by Mateus and Tomás, their brothers, and they've been working with us since Bacurau.
Are you going to release the score?
On vinyl, yeah.
Of course on vinyl, but it's not practical when you travel on a plane.
It is already on Spotify or something.
No,
But
I
vinyl
don't like
is more
Spotify.
special.
I like in between.
I have to make sure to send you one.
Yes, thank you. This is how I get gifts, this is how they come back.
Corruption.
A level of corruption that's very low.
High
Very
level.
low stakes.
With a good heart, yeah.
Do we have time for audience question? I don't see anyone. Yeah, yes? One? Is there a microphone? Okay. So raise your hand. There's a microphone. Yes. Someone here? Anyone? I can't see anything.
Hi, I'm also actually from Salvador in Brazil, from the Northeast. We've been seeing incredible films recently about this very difficult time in our country. You mentioned Marighella, and I'm just wondering, what is the importance of going back to this time? Why do we have to look into it? What are lessons that perhaps we haven't learned? Why is it so important to put on film? Thank you.
I have to say that my main aim was not to face history and face the facts. I think the 70s is an interesting moment for me in my life, but then it happens to be politically charged, of course. But I did not want to go and do a classic dictatorship film like we have so many in Chile, Argentina, and Brazil. Nothing against these films, of course. But I really think that, and this is something that I've been making films about this since my short films, about memory and preservation. And I think Brazil has a trauma with its own memory. We had the amnesty law in 1979, which was a brilliant idea by the military regime to basically pardon themselves for everything they had done since 1964, all the raping, killing, kidnapping, torture.
I mean, it's to move on.
Let's move on and let's avoid talking about unpleasant things. And I really believe that broke something in my country, so much so that just recently there was a movement which is now practically dead of pardoning what happened, the copycat situation that Brazil, the far right copied from the US with the storming of the government buildings in Brasilia and the Supreme Justice building and people defecating on the desks of, and all this is on video. And about 1,000 people were arrested. And then the Bolsonaro family pushed for an amnesty for all of them because this is so unpleasant, and they were not having a good day that day. So I think memory is a great theme for cinema because cinema itself is a piece of memory. Each film is a piece of archive, and that I find endlessly fascinating, and I'm afraid I might keep going back to the same theme in the next film, hopefully in a different color.
I think we're going to take one last question. There's someone here. Yeah.
I'm just wondering if you considered a different ending at some point, that everything turns out okay and he...
I think there is, but he won't tell us.
Emilie is completely wrong. In fact, my wonderful first assistant, he was very concerned about not having a plan B. And I insisted that there was no plan B. For me, it was very important that this is the ending. I'm the son of a historian, so I remember when she mentioned discovering information that she found disturbing, sensitive in the archives, and I think I really wanted to have the release of information coming from a newspaper in the past. And that's the ending. I find that since we premiered the film in Cannes, the film is very well received, and many people, of course, understand the ending, but there is maybe a few people who are either shocked or they find it unacceptable that would happen the way it happens. And I completely stand by that ending. I think it's quite truthful and very strong from a Brazilian point of view. But thank you for the question.
Well, I mean, we just didn't want Wagner to die, but so you had to bring back as a son.
Everyone in making the film didn't want him to die. They kept asking Kleber, but let's shoot a different ending until the end, and never happened.
Yeah, maybe he sells handicraft in some beach in 2025. I don't know. Not in this film.
So that's the other cut that you took out, but you filmed. It'll be in the next time we show the film. We'll show when he wakes up.
I think he comes back alive in his son. Genetically, it's one way of, yeah.
We actually have to wrap it up. Even so, there's so many other things we needed to talk about, like the shark. But you'll be back, I think, when we're opening the film, and we have other plans to do a show around your inspiration about this film.
I have to thank the New York Film Festival, of course, for bringing us here. And I have to thank Neon, who've been doing a great job with this film. And yeah, we are just so happy to be screening The Secret Agent. And thank you very much for staying and listening to us.
Thank you.